You woke up this morning with a list, emails to answer, places to be, things to finish before the day slipped away. And somewhere between the alarm and the coffee, you probably felt it. That low hum of pressure, that sense that you were already behind. What if that feeling is the strange part? What if the version of a day that your ancestors actually lived looked almost nothing like yours? For most of human history, there was no morning routine. There was no commute. There was no inbox. For at least 95% of the time that anatomically modern humans have existed on this planet, the shape of a day was something else entirely. Something quieter, something more brutal, something that you might not recognize at all, and yet something your body still remembers in ways you cannot fully explain. So what did they actually do? Not what textbooks suggest. Not the cartoon version of the caveman dragging a club. The real version. The version reconstructed from decades of archaeological evidence, from the living hunter-gatherer societies that anthropologists have studied for generations, from the bones and the tools and the fire pits and the residue left behind by people who were, in every biological sense, identical to you. Your day starts the moment the sun rises. There is no alarm because there does not need to be one. Your body has tracked the light all night through thin eyelids, and the moment the sky shifts, something inside you shifts too. This is not a metaphor. Research by chronobiologist Russell Foster at the University of Oxford has shown that the human circadian system is extraordinarily sensitive to natural light cycles, tuned over millions of years of evolution to synchronize behavior with the movement of the sun. Before artificial light, your ancestors did not fight their biology. They moved with it. The first hour of a hunter-gatherer morning looks nothing like yours. There is no coffee. There is no screen. What there is, almost universally across the anthropological record, is fire maintenance, social talk, and food. Not a cooked breakfast in the modern sense. More likely leftover food from the night before or nothing at all, depending on what was available. Jerome Silberbauer, who spent years studying the G/WI San people of the Kalahari in the 1970s, documented mornings that were unhurried by modern standards. They talked. They tended the fire. Children played near the adults. The pressure that defines your morning simply did not exist. Then came the work. And here is where the modern imagination gets it almost entirely wrong. The popular image of early humans is one of constant, desperate struggle, running from predators, fighting for every scrap of food, living, as Thomas Hobbes famously put it, lives that were nasty, brutish, and short. But the evidence tells a different story. Anthropologist Marshall Solins caused an uproar in 1966 when he presented a paper arguing that hunter-gatherers were, in an important sense, the original affluent society. Not wealthy in the modern sense, but rich in the one thing your schedule never seems to have enough of: time. Solins reviewed field studies from multiple hunter-gatherer groups and found that the actual time spent on what we might call work, acquiring food, making tools, maintaining camp, averaged somewhere between 3 and 5 hours a day. The rest of the day was something else. Rest, play, conversation, the making and repairing of objects, sleep sometimes in the middle of the afternoon when the heat peaked. Now, this is not a paradise story. It is important to hold both truths at once. Those 3 to 5 hours of work were genuinely hard. Walking long distances in the heat, carrying heavy loads, digging for tubers with a sharpened stick, tracking an animal for hours across uneven ground. The physical demands were real and they were daily. Bioarchaeologist Christopher Ruff at Johns Hopkins University has studied the bone density and skeletal stress markers of prehistoric humans and found consistent evidence of high physical loading, especially in the legs, hips, and shoulders. These were not sedentary people, but they were also not people who worked themselves into exhaustion from dawn to dusk, 6 days a week, in service of a system that demanded it. So what happened in the hours that remained? Anthropologists who have lived alongside contemporary hunter-gatherer groups describe an afternoon that looks, at first glance, almost leisurely. People sit, they talk, they groom each other, and this is not trivial. Robin Dunbar, the British anthropologist and psychologist at the University of Oxford, has argued that social grooming in early humans served the same function it does in other primates. It built trust, reinforced alliances, and held the social fabric of the group together. In a world without contracts or institutions, your relationships were the only safety net you had. Spending hours maintaining them was not a luxury. It was survival infrastructure. Children in these groups spent their days doing something that will look familiar and yet completely foreign by modern standards. They watched the adults work and they imitated what they saw. A child learning to nap a stone tool did not sit through a class. They watched, they tried, they failed, they tried again. The knowledge passed body to body, not page to page. Storytelling happened, and this may be one of the most underappreciated parts of the ancient human day. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner of the University of Utah published a landmark study in 2014 comparing the daytime conversations of the Jew/Hoan Bushmen of southern Africa with their firelight conversations. The difference was striking. During the day, about 34% of conversation topics were about economic matters: food, resources, tools. But by firelight, that number dropped dramatically. At night, around 81% of conversations were about social topics, relationships, distant places, memories, and crucially, stories. Stories about people who had done remarkable things. Stories that encoded values and transferred them across generations without a single written word. Your ancestors sat around fires at night and told each other who they were. The evening was not just for stories. Fire itself changed everything. Before controlled fire, the night was dangerous and dark, and the safe move was sleep. But fire extended the day. It pushed predators back. It created a protected social space in the darkness. And in that space, something important happened that we are only beginning to understand. Anthropologist Michael Chazan at the University of Toronto has argued that the controlled use of fire goes back at least 1 million years at sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, which means that the fire-lit social gathering is not a recent cultural invention. It is one of the oldest human habits we have. Think about what that means for your body right now. The pull you feel toward a warm gathering, the way conversation flows more easily in dim light, the almost involuntary relaxation that comes when a fire is lit. These are not preferences. They are ancient defaults written into you by hundreds of thousands of evenings exactly like the one your ancestors had, sitting close together against the dark. Sleep, when it came, was not the single consolidated 8-hour block that sleep science now considers the gold standard and struggles to explain why so many people cannot achieve. Historian Roger E. Kirch at Virginia Tech spent decades uncovering evidence that pre-industrial humans across many cultures slept in 2 distinct phases, separated by an hour or more of wakefulness in the middle of the night. During this waking interval, people prayed, talked quietly, had sex, smoked, or simply lay in a state of quiet reflection. The word used in historical texts for this period was simply the first sleep and the second sleep, as naturally as we might say morning and afternoon. The anxiety you feel when you wake at 3 a.m. and cannot get back to sleep. That anxiety may be a modern invention, the waking itself may not be. And then the sky shifted again, and the cycle began. Here is what makes all of this strange and worth sitting with. The body that woke up to that ancient morning is the same body you are living in right now. The circadian system that tracked the sun is your circadian system. The social brain that craved fire-lit conversation craves connection through your phone screen. The capacity for play that occupied a child for hours with a stone is the same capacity that makes you lose track of time when you are genuinely absorbed in something. The need for unstructured time that Solins documented in the Kalahari is a need you carry into every overscheduled week. You did not evolve for your current day. You evolved for that one. And no amount of productivity hacking changes the biological baseline. Your body is still running the ancient operating system, and every time you wake up tired, every time you crave an afternoon rest, every time you sit around a table with people you love and feel something unknot inside you, that is not weakness or laziness or nostalgia. That is the oldest version of you, recognizing something that feels like home. You woke up this morning with a list, but the list is new. You are not.